As I went down in the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear that starry crown? Good Lord, show me the way. Oh, sisters, let's go down, come on down. Oh, sisters, let's go down in the river to pray. As I went down in the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear that starry crown? Good Lord, show me the way. Oh, brothers, let's go down, come on down. Oh, brothers, let's go down in the river to pray. As I went down in the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear that starry crown? Good Lord, show me the way. Oh, brothers, let's go down, come on down. Oh, fathers, let's go down in the river to pray. As I went down in the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear that starry crown? Good Lord, show me the way. Oh, mothers, let's go down, come on down. Oh, mothers, let's go down in the river to pray. As I went down in the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear that starry crown? Good Lord, show me the way. Oh, sinners, let's go down, come on down. Oh, sinners, let's go down in the river to pray. Down in the river to pray. Down in the river to pray.
Thank you all for starting us off on just the right note. Good evening. I'm Joanne Lee, one of the pastors here at Calvary Presbyterian Church, and on behalf of this congregation, some of whom are here tonight, welcome. We're so glad that you're here. Your presence here gives me hope, so thank you for coming. And of course, special thanks to Lamott for sharing yourself with us through your writings and allowing us to come together as a community tonight in this way. We will never be together in this same place, in the same way, ever again. So thanks to all of you and to you for making that possible. I also want to take a brief moment to thank our musicians, our choir directors, our staff and volunteers, Fran Johns, who is our Calvary connection to Anne, and to all those who worked tirelessly behind the scenes to make this event possible. Thank you. We are so deeply grateful to all of you. Just a few announcements. We want at least part of this evening to be participatory. So if you have a question for Anne, there are note cards that were in your program. You can write that on that note card, and towards the end of the reading, you can check on your program when that is. We will be taking them up, so just pass them down to the ends of your pews. If you're sitting at the end hoping you could sneak out at some point, we're going to need your help for this part at least. Pass them to the ends, and then ushers will come around and take those, and then we will share those with Fran and Anne so that they can address some of them. We obviously won't have time to get to all of your questions, but we will do the best we can. Books by Anne Lamott will also continue to be sold following the program in the atrium, and Anne is willing to sign and personalize those books. The book signing will be in Calvin Hall, which is out and to your right, my left. There will also be refreshments and homemade cookies prepared by our very own Ruth Ellen Miller and Kathy Bear, so you definitely want to partake in some of those. In the library lounge, which is back past the bathrooms, I hope you found the bathrooms if you needed them, they're just down this hallway. There is a small photography exhibit with the photographs by Rosalind Banish, who is, I believe, here tonight. These pictures show and tell the stories of people who have experienced abortion or who are close to that experience as partners and providers. We believe it is important to lift up these voices, especially in these days, and we hope that if you feel compelled, so compelled to hear and read about these stories, please take a look. It is always a joy to partner with St. Andrew to provide uplifting music and a program that promises to be filled with laughter and hope. During this next song, we will be passing around the offering plates. We know that you all have paid to be here, and we're so grateful that you have. But this is a fundraiser for the congregation that nurtured and continues to nurture Anne Lamott. So if you feel so compelled to give, we will welcome you to do so during that time. Friends, I invite you to take a deep breath in and out. Fully arrive in this place. Whatever you are going through, whatever today has brought, this is where you are meant to be tonight. So welcome. We're glad you're here.
Bye. Well, I'm going to sing now. Can you hear me in back? Yeah, okay, good. Oh my God, that was so incredible. Joanne, is there a water bottle policy here? Which I have water, but...
Drink as you need to.
Okay. So I can't even tell you how blown away I am that you all came tonight. Fran and Calvary have been we're sort of their little sister church. We're a tiny little church in Marin City. There's usually about 30 or 35 of us. And we really welcome you. I don't want to get into an ugly rivalry with Calvary, but if you're looking for a church home, a tiny, tiny little church with a church school, 11 o'clock until the end of the month, and then I think we're switching till 10. But you're so welcome, and you can actually be in the choir if you are looking for a place to sing. You know, we sing because we're happy and we're free no matter what. And we don't ever give up, no matter what it looks like or how long it takes. So that's our message tonight, and I'm just so grateful. I'm a Medicare recipient now, just in the last month or so. Thank you. And Kaiser Senior Advantage. So, which also means I'm just really spaced out. And I got married last month, and so it was funny because a few years ago when Calvary hosted us for the same event, we're always broke. And Calvary always is like a girder in the old Mr. Magoo when he was about to step off the high rise and the girder comes up. And so Fran and I did this. We go back 30 years. And Fran said, so much has happened for you that it's like dream come true stuff. Is there anything you still just long for deep in your heart? And I thought for a minute, and in front of all of you, I said, I'd still love to be married. And so I turned 65 on April 10th. And on April 13th, I got married, you know? So, so try to convince me that God is not a show-off, because God is. And so Fran and I are going to talk tonight a lot about hope, but I was going to read from the last book I wrote. I can't quite think of the title right now, but the booksellers know. Ask them. But the funny thing was, in November of 2016, I was traveling a bit, and everywhere I went, people were literally freaked out and in such grievous pain and confusion. And I realized that the way home is always mercy. It's always to do the deep dive and find in your heart the warmth and compassion. You know, it's not about getting more. It's not something you could buy or get assurance of or date or lease. It's about tapping into the truth of your spiritual identity, which is that you're loved and chosen as is. One of my Sunday school girls is here, and that's like the message. As is, loved and chosen, and that is where our safety lies. And so I wrote a book about mercy, and a year passed, and everywhere I went, people were still just enraged and scared to death. And those of us with little ones in our lives, whether we're Sunday school teachers or grandparents or uncles and aunts, just felt scared to death. Where do we start? So I wrote a book about hope, because I've never given up. I've never given up on the belief that God's love, as it comes through us kind of motley crew, will save the day. And that Henry Nouwen talked a lot about the beloved community, and that no matter what happens, we will meet in beloved communities and we'll share what we have. And we'll get each other water, and we'll give the little kids pencils, colored pencils and paper. And for that, and we will sing We will sing, whether Carolyn is here to play or not. You know, we'll sing because we're happy. We're just so happy we're alive and we stick together. It's so profound. And we sing because we're free and no one can take that away from us, no matter what it looks like. So I wrote this whole book, and then it turns out National Geographic has grown concerned because most of their subscribers are also Kaiser Senior Advantage people. We've all gotten old, so they wanted to bring in a younger crowd, and so they're doing columns now that are a little bit hipper than just the travel pieces. And I mean, I grew up, the first truth I knew was the National Geographic. It was the covers with the children of India with flies on their eyes, you know, and the children of Africa with their bones sticking out, and that I think was really National Geographic was where my, whatever compassion I muster began. Like, I love Jesus and I love my church literally more than anything. But I get into trouble with God with sick kids. And I always say to God, this is kind of where the buck stops for me. I don't understand it. But what do? You show up with mercy. You show up. You dig into your pockets. You show up with warm clothes to send to colder climates and shoes, and you have food banks. And our church has a food bank. And there's a ministry called the Night Ministry. If you're looking for a place to plug in San Francisco, where the people just like us just sit with homeless people through the night, through the cold and the dark. That's what the whole Bible's about. We sit with each other through the cold and the dark with blankets and tea and granola bars. And miracles happen. And we wake up and the sun is up and we sing again because we're happy and we're free and nothing and no one can take that away from us. So I wrote a piece for National Geographic and I asked Fran if it would be okay if I read from this instead of the Hope book. Probably says at the end what the title is. Wait a minute. I'm on it.
Almost everything.
Almost everything, not notes on hope. So, but this article is really like the consomme. It's really boiled down and boiled down and boiled down to the whole book in about 5 pages. So I'm going to read you that, and then I'm going to introduce the legendary Fran Johns, and we'll do an interview and answer some of your questions. And then we'll all end singing, because we're so happy that we can look around into faces that are sweet and gentle and not hurting others and not taking from others and not dominating, but are just reaching out and touching others and saying, hi. That's the 4th grade prayers. Hi. Hello. Okay, so here it is. You would almost have to be nuts to be filled with hope in a world so rife with hunger, hatred, climate change, pollution, and pestilence, let alone the self-destructive or severely annoying behavior of certain people, both famous and just down the hall, none of whom we will name by name. Yet I have boundless hope most of the time. Hope is a sometimes cranky optimism, trust and confidence that those I love will be okay, that they will come through whatever life holds in store. Hope is the belief that no matter how dire things look or how long rescue or healing takes, modern science in tandem with God and people's goodness and caring will boggle our minds in the best possible way. Has that not ever been true? It's always true. Wild. Hope is for me not usually the religious-looking fingers of light slanting through the clouds or the lurid sunrise. It's more a sturdy garment like an old chamois shirt, a reminder that I have been here before in circumstances just as frightening, and I came through and will again. All I have to do is stay grounded in the truth. Oh, that's very nice, you may well respond. What does that even mean, the truth? I don't presume to say what capital T truth means, but I do know my truth, and it's this. Everyone I know, including me, has lived through devastating times at least twice, through seemingly unsurvivable loss. And yet we have come through because of the love of our closest people, the weird healing properties of time, random benevolence, and of course our dogs. At regular intervals, life gets a little too real for my taste. The wider world seems full of bombers, polluters, threats of all kinds. My own small world suffers ruptures, a couple of deaths, a couple of breakups, a young adult who has scared me out of my wits for a couple of years now, that leave me struggling to stay on my feet. In these situations, I usually have one of two responses, either that I am doomed or that I need to figure out whom to blame and then correct their behavior. But neither of these is true. The truth is that through the workings of love, science, grace, community, time, some elemental shift will occur, and we will find we are semi-okay again. And semi-okay can be a miracle. Sometimes I have to believe that heaven is just a new pair of glasses. That was said by a priest who helped establish Alcoholics Anonymous roughly 80 years ago. And when I remember to put on these glasses, I spy reasons for hope on every street. You can't walk a block without seeing recycling bins. Nations are pledging serious action on climate change. My young friend Olivia, who has cystic fibrosis, got into a clinical trial 2 years ago for a newfangled drug, and it's working, meaning she will live a great deal longer than we ever dared to hope. I like these days in spite of our collective fears and grief. I love antibiotics. I'm crazy about electricity. I get to fly on jet airplanes. And in the face of increased climate-related catastrophes, after I pass through the conviction that we are doomed and that these are end times, I remember what Mr. Rogers always said, in times of disaster, we look to the helpers. Look to the volunteers and aid organizations clearing away the rubble, giving children vaccines, to planes and trains and ships, bringing food to the starving. Look at Desmond Tutu and Malala, Bill Gates, and the student activists of Parkland, Florida. Anyone committed to public health, teachers, and all those aging hippie folk singer types who galvanized the early work of decontaminating the Hudson River. You could say that river cleanup was child's play compared to the melting of the ice caps, and I would say thank you for sharing and get back to doing what is possible. Those who say it can't be done should get out of the way of those who are doing it. We take the action, soup kitchens, creek restorations, mentoring, and then the insight follows that by showing up with hope to help others, I'm guaranteed that hope is present. Then my own hope increases. By creating hope for others, I end up awash in the stuff. We create goodness in the world, and that gives us hope. We plant bulbs in the cold, stony dirt of winter, and our aging arthritic fingers get nicked. But we just do it, and a couple months later, life blooms. As daffodils, paper whites, tulips. Hope is sometimes a decision that we won't bog down in analysis paralysis. We show up in waiters or with checkbooks. We send money to India and the Sierra Club, the Union of Concerned Scientists, and to Uncle Ed's GoFundMe account for his surgery. We do what is possible. You want hope? In India, you see families waking up on hard, dusty streets and the poorest moms combing their kids' hair for school. School is hope. Closer to home, you see a teenager recovering from a massive brain bleed and head off to college for kids with special needs not only alive, but carrying a backpack full of books and supplies and lunch. Lunch gives me hope. You saw anyone, maybe yourself or your child, get and stay sober. You read that the number of mountain gorillas in Central Africa has risen consistently over the past few years. One had barely dared to hope that they would even survive, and yet, if this keeps up, we'll be up to our necks in mountain gorillas. We might hope that this or that will happen and be disappointed. But when we instead have hope in love and grace and the resilience and power of the human spirit, in innovation, in laughter and nature, we won't be disappointed. I wish I had a magic wand and could make people in power believe in climate science, but I don't. I do, however, have good shoes in which to march for science and sanity. I see people rising up to their highest, most generous potential in every direction in which I remember to look, when I remember to look up and around and not at my aching feet. My friend Olivia hates having cystic fibrosis, and every moment of life is a little harder than it is for people without the disease. But most of the time, she's the happiest person I'm going to see on any given day. She is either in gratitude or in the recording studio, where she is recording her second album of songs that she wrote and plays on guitar. The engineer hits the mute button when she needs to cough, which is fairly frequently. She got a terrifying diagnosis 23 years ago, but with her community's support, she and her parents kept hoping she would somehow be okay, or at least okay-ish. And then voila, the successful clinical trial of a miracle drug. Children pour out of school labs equipped with the science and passion to help restore estuaries and watersheds. Church groups pitch in to build water wells to nourish developing world villages. As John Lennon said, everything will be okay in the end. If it's not okay, it's not the end. This has always been true before. We can decide to hope that it will be again. Sometimes hope is a radical act, sometimes a quietly merciful response, sometimes a second wind or just an increased awareness of goodness and beauty. Maybe you didn't get what you prayed for, but what you got instead was waking up to the momentousness of life, the power of loving hearts. You hope to wake up in time to see the dawn, the first light, a technicolor sunrise, but the early morning instead is cloudy with mist. Still, as you linger, the ridge stands majestically black against a milky sky, and if you pay attention, you'll see the setting of the moon that illuminated us all as we slept, and you see a new day dawn. So we never give up, no matter what. Please welcome my great friend, Fran Johns.
Keith wanted us to do this in advance. We didn't think we could. We're getting there. I remember a few decades ago when I turned 65. So I'm really glad that now you're on Medicare too.
Oh, they can't hear you, Fran. Let's see, maybe Keith could come back. Can you hear me? See,
That
we
makes
said
a
to
lot of
Keith we
difference.
can't do it, and he said he thought we could.
Oh, good. Now, can you hear me way back in the back? Okay, I don't need to say much. I like interviewing Anne Lamott because I say, would, and then she takes off.
Can she use this?
Oh, okay. I think I'm heard.
Okay.
So I actually did mark a few pages in the book. This is the book. The agent usually says, hold up the book. I noticed we didn't get that message, but anyway. But there is, in one chapter, you tell the wonderful story of watching a YouTube video of some Japanese kids playing soccer with an American group. Some of you have read the book and know this story. And the Japanese team won, but instead of jumping up and down and cheering and gloating, they all came over and hugged the little American boys and said how well they had played and that they would probably win next year. So my question to you is, how do you think we're ever going to get that kind of a shift made in this super competitive, let's make a deal kind of world? How do you think that's going to happen?
You know, we're both in recovery, and we both heard over 30 years ago that the willingness comes from the pain. And the willingness to transcend the material and the world of appearance and success and competition comes from the pain and the emptiness of it not filling up the Swiss cheese holes inside of us. Nothing out there well, no level of achievement it's an inside job. And people, everywhere I go to speak, are right on the cusp of stepping into a new way of living, a slightly higher plane of existence, a slightly deeper commitment to the same old spiritual tools we have in our battered toolboxes of meditation and prayer and service. And I think it's very scary when you realize at 50 or whatever, 35, that everything they told they, in the paranoid sense of the word they, the parents and the culture, the teachers, everything they said was a lie, maybe not intentional, but it wasn't true. It feels great to do well in school. It feels great to study. It feels great to be completely immersed in books and discussions about books, but it doesn't offer salvation. And what I find is that people cannot believe that nothing they were told worked. And the right spouse, the right house, to no longer be a renter, to have a better car. You get it, and it's great, briefly. I told a story just a couple days ago of Sam, my son, has a podcast called Hello Humans, a blog that you actually subscribe to, thank you. Peggy Knickerbocker subscribes to it, Shelley Adams. But he did a podcast, and I don't even know what a podcast really is. But he did it with Paul Williams, the guy, the very small, kind of slightly albino-looking composer and singer who won an Academy Award for the movie he did with Barbara Streisand. And he and Sam had this conversation you can listen to for free at Hello Humans, where Paul said, you know, the night I won the Academy Award, over 1 billion people worldwide were watching the ultimate achievement. And he said it brought me 24 hours. Right? Because he was drinking and he was a mess and he was trying to get the outside to fix him and heal him and spackle together the holes and the cracks. Whereas when you begin a spiritual program, it's all about the Leonard Cohen line that there are cracks and everything, and that's how the light gets in. So I don't think that somebody just said to me the other day in recovery, no one has ever gotten well based on what someone else has told them. You know, which is there's a whole 12-step program for people with tiny control issues who are trying to fix and save other people. I can tell you not one Not one person in our human history has gotten an alcoholic sober. It comes from the pain. And so my belief is that there's so much pressure on us right now from, governmentally and in terms of climate, and that people are feeling a good kind of a benevolent pressure to wake up to what's true and to what nourishes and affirms, and then what they can give away as medicine, because that service, as you at Calvary know so well, is really what we're so hungry for.
So you think at some point the grown-ups or a few grown-ups might be catching on to the idea that the Japanese kids had, that the victory wasn't going to be a lasting thing, but that their response to the victory is a good thing.
It was just, to me, sacred, It was just so beautiful for these little kids. They're all like, in my memory, on the YouTube, they're 9 and 10, and the little Japanese kids just kicked our butts, They beat us by so much, and if those have been American boys who know what they've been raised to do, like the endless high-fiving and the smirking and the whole thing, and the little Japanese boys came over and they comforted them, because the American boys were crying. They were just humiliated, and the Japanese boys were, oh my God, you guys played great. Yeah, I bet you'll win next year. You have a real chance at that. You were really good. You're one of the best teams we played. And, Jesus said you must become as little children. And I think that a lot of grown-ups who end up hitting a bottom with an addiction, a compulsion, something so self-destructive, grace looks like running out of any more good ideas about how to shape up and how to save yourself. And grace looks like saying, I just thought of what the fourth great prayer would be. It's like, whatever. Like, I am out of any more plans to fluff myself up in such a way that I can pretend to even feel good about how I'm living. And so, Neil and I were in Maui for a retreat.
This is the new husband.
The brand new, as yet unruined husband. And you know what? There were 350 people there for their retreat, and a lot of them were like old aging hippies like us, and a lot of them were young. And they're just thirsting for truth. They're seekers. And they are capable and willing to be very quiet and very still, which is where, along with singing, we enter the mystery. And that gave me a lot of hope. So many young people wanting to know from us older people, is this what you do? It's what you do. You feel it, you say it, you tell the truth, you find a couple people you can tell your secrets to, and you help. And Jesus says, look, there's this one thing I want you to get. I want you to take care of the poor. If you want to feel me directly, go where the poor are, because I'll be right there. And the kids want to, whether they want the young people, everyone under 40 now to be the Backstreet Boys, but they all want that thing, that experience of a power and a reality higher and greater than the immersion and the telephone and the TV and the YouTube and the endless noise machine of distraction. They want this thing. And that just made me so hopeful.
Well, that thing might bring me, I don't have my questions in order, but this is good stuff in this book. But early on, you're talking about paradoxes. You want to talk about paradoxes? One being life is miserable, it'll change, and something else about it will also be true. Have you got some other paradoxical? Can I borrow your don't lose my questions, but that's where you were
some of the other questions very quickly. No. So, there's a whole chapter on paradox, because we were all raised, or everyone I know was raised believing certain things were just true, right? And there was this kind of black and white thinking. Well, I was raised by atheists, and I was raised to think that Christians were as crazy as you could get, right? And it was just black and white. We worshiped science in the New York Times. My parents were very unhappy, and yet they clung to what they had been raised on. Well, my parents both had parents who did church, but they had been educated in great universities, and there was truth, and it was science, and it was this, and it was that. Well, life is taxing enough at its most predictable, but the truth is, anything that is true, the opposite is probably true too. Or that if you examine the opposite, you might find truth in it. We don't know very much. I think that's what saved me, is that spiritually and religiously, I have almost no theological understanding. I don't try to figure out the triune nature of the divinity. You know, basically what I teach my Sunday school kids works for me. The song he sings, that works for me. I'm good. I really feel like the big golden Labrador when it comes to theology. But let me just read you a little bit. Life is taxing enough at its most predictable, but you can't bank on anything. For example, we learned as children that light is particles, and in a predictable world, we would all still agree that since light obviously is particles, like grains of sand, we could all get on with our lives and maybe get the cat a flea dip later. But then you have annoying people who say and can prove that light is also waves, like undulations of water. The paradox is that both of these are true. And you know what's so awful? They're both true at the same time. And when scientists observe them, by their observation, they change the nature of the light. But if both aspects of light are true, then why have they never been observed together in the same room at the same time? It's the old Batman Bruce Wayne question. If it were left to me, one camp would just give in and say, okay, light is particles, or fine, have it your way, light is waves. Maybe life and light are both like that, like 2 minutes in one. I was thinking about this at all helpful to my tiny princess self. It's disorienting. It's like a disturbance in the inner ear. So what if only one constant is change? Why bother touching up your roots? What if Mother Teresa was right, that if you have love until it hurts, there can be no more hurt, only more love? Well, ixnam the erdhe, I have hurt plenty. I am good on hurt, and yet that's where the portal has been for me into deeper truth, into understanding of grace and divine love as it shows in our communities, our faith communities, our gatherings, our fellowships, our peace marches. So that's the paradox, is that everything in me wants to I feel like really I've done the hurt. I'm good on the hurt. I've had a lot of loss. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And yet, there's a lot of hurt going on in my life right now with people that are very sick, and I'm scared to death for them. And I have tremendous faith at the same time that God's got it. How can that be? That I feel so afraid and I feel so confident, no matter what, God's got it. And that in the hurt for me and for them will be healing and expansion. So it's not my system. If I were God's West Coast representative, I would have a completely different system that did not include so much discomfort.
We can talk to God about that. And so, okay, I'm going to try to segue. I think you dropped all of my most profound questions on the floor. So, but that does segue into the chapter that I really want. I liked them all. I didn't find a chapter I didn't really like. There's one where you are talking about how we flash on our loved ones who have died. And I'm liking this, having lost a loved one. But I think you are saying, because you have experienced some profound losses, way younger than I. And you were talking, you write in the book about how you flash on their presence. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? How that works? Or what it means for people who have experienced losses?
Well, everyone here in this church has experienced what felt like unsurvivable losses. And the culture tells you should get over this and move on. And if you've lost a friend, you can